Greetings, salutations, and bienvenido, my friends. It is I, Mike to the Y, and welcome to another episode of the No Feet Survival Guide, where I go over challenges in my life and how I overcame them. And believe me when I tell you, if I can do it, you certainly can too. So, first, I want to give a shout out to a couple of people who have helped me out financially today. And thank you to Stephanie and to Rick for your generous contributions. And at the end of the podcast today, we'll let you know how you can be a supporter of the No Feet Survival Guide. And hopefully, what I tell you here and what I told you in my past episodes, which is on YouTube or Spotify or iHeartRadio. I believe I am on Apple iTunes now, or whatever you call it, iPodcasts. But I'm on Apple, so you can look me up there as well. But yes, we'll give you something at the end of the show to help support the show. So again, this is unedited, unfiltered. It's a boy in his microphone just talking to the people out there, letting them know what's going on in my life, if you relate, and how I've done to overcome it. So, today I want to talk about toxicity. And that seems to be a good buzzword for a lot of the things that have gone on, more so recently than in the past. But obviously, this is a thing that's probably gone on since the beginning of time, when people just have ill intentions, are not following the word of God, and not living their life to the full potential. And it ends up affecting a lot of people more than we ever know. And to start off, let me just say that, outside of one person in history that I know of, everybody probably has some sort of toxicity in them. And if you can't guess who the one person is who doesn't have any toxicity in them, then maybe you should rethink your beliefs. But, I believe that to be Jesus. He was without sin. He was without the toxicity. But we all have it in some degree or another. And I'm also going to state right from the beginning that not everybody is toxic to each other. You might be toxic to person A, but you're not toxic to person B. So I just kind of want to put that out there. But one of the things I experienced in the last week or so since coming back from Orlando was something that happened on X, the artist formerly known as Twitter. And basically, I'm on there to put a thought of the day in there to try and make people smile or laugh, and to basically be a total smart aleck. Could be another word you can use there after smart. But yeah, I'm basically on there to be a smart aleck and not to fawn over these pictures of women who are scantily clad or not scantily clad, and asking, oh, am I beautiful? Am I this? Am I that? That's kind of part of the toxicity, is people looking for validation. Now, I'm looking for validation too, don't get me wrong, but there's validation and then there's validation. So what ended up happening to me is, and you can tell by the picture here, I am not the handsomest person in the world. And I'm quite certain that most people posing as females on whatever social media platform you want, Instagram, Facebook, X, Snapchat, TikTok, etc., 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 that they look at me as a simp. Now, for those of you who don't know what a simp is, it's a shortened term for simpleton or simple. Basically, that somebody like me is supposed to look at a picture of a woman and fall madly in love with her, and they all say the right things and this and that and the other thing, and people like me get bombarded with that. And from what I understand, a lot of women get bombarded with that too, where it's a picture of some fireman without his shirt on and he's showing off the six-pack, etc., etc., all the muscles, and they're most of them are basically posers. It's I don't know how else I can put it. So I get these on a daily basis, and if you end up let me back up and say this is specifically for X, where I will make a comment to someone who I know is the real person, okay? And I'll kind of leave it at that and just make a smart aleck remark, or I'll make a general remark on somebody who may or may not be the actual person, okay? So when I do something like that, usually you'll get 50 likes, 75 likes, whatever, 100 likes, 5 likes. And usually when you look at the list of people who like that particular comment, you'll get to find out that, okay, it's all these women who, one, are basically upfront with their intentions. Check out my menu, 18 plus. Check my OnlyFans page, this, that, and the other thing. So the other ones are kind of sly about their profile on X. Whereas, I'm this Christian woman, I believe in God, I believe in America, MAGA, etc., etc. And then you look at their profile. You hit a button on the date that they established that profile. And again, thank you, Elon Musk, for putting this on. The X profile is the country of origin where they started the profile. You'll find out a lot of them are not in the United States of America, believe it or not. So there's a lot of them from, say, Nigeria is the biggest culprit that I'm finding. I don't even know if anybody in Nigeria has a legitimate job, the way there's so many of them posing as white women. So, go take that for whatever it's worth. And then, or they're from East Asia or Pakistan or India. You can name a Eastern Hemisphere country or Southern Hemisphere country, and there's probably somebody who, doesn't quite fit the picture with where they're originating from. And we'll leave it at that. So a lot of times if I'm going to make some sort of response now, if I don't say, well, hey, how's it being a white woman in Nigeria kind of thing, I will leave my smart aleck remark. But before I do that, I hit their profile and make sure that it's originating from the United States. Okay, so at least, like, if they're saying something that I like or I'm entertained by, or they started following me, I will follow them back, which I didn't in this particular case that I'm about to get to. So, and I probably should have known right from the start, and I kind of did in the back of my head. This person's name was Millie. How many young people do you know named Millie? Exactly. So, and she ends up DMing me. Thank you for following me. Oh, where you from? Well, that sort of little chit chat nonsense. Told her where I was from and what I do. And this is part of what I do. And yeah, it was a pleasant enough conversation for the first couple of days or two. And then the big pitch comes in. And this is where the toxicity happens. Well, you need to subscribe to my OnlyFans page so we can really get to know each other. No thanks. If you want to do OnlyFans, you go for it. That's not for me to say you're going to get judged when the time comes. But, yeah, not my scoop of ice cream, as it were. So, now she just kept persisting and persisting and persisting. And finally, I was like, no, I gotta block you. This is enough of that. But just that little story got me thinking about what a toxic world we're living in right now. And I know a lot of guys have experienced what I experienced in the story I just told you. But I know there's a lot of girls that have kind of gone through something similar, that they're looking for love or looking for a new friend or anything like that, and you kind of get suckered into the picture and you find out later what has happened. And again, I've always kind of said this about the internet when it was first coming up in the 90s and what have you, and doing chats on AOL or on whatever platform was available at that time, Yahoo Chat and all that fun stuff. So now with social media, we're kind of getting the same thing, only amplified. There's a lot of good in social media. We can learn a lot from what people say, how people think, and that's a good thing. The bad thing is trusting it. And I've always tried to go with the Ronald Reagan approach to trust but verify. And when I haven't verified, yeah, I've been burned pretty bad. And if you might have heard a couple episodes ago, yeah, it ended up costing me about $1,000 getting scammed by a business. So, a crypto business. But in any event, that little incident with this person who, it originated from the United States, so, at least there was that. But they were looking to have me subscribe to their OnlyFans, which, again, if you want to do that, knock yourself out. That's not me. I'm not. Yeah, I could win the lottery tomorrow and I still wouldn't do OnlyFans. So, but those of you out there on X who are following me and are thinking I'm going to just fall for some sort of OnlyFans scheme or gimmick or whatever you want to call it, yeah, just put it out of your mind now. For those of you on TikTok who, just like, oh my gosh, you're so handsome and this and that, sorry, I'm calling bull cookies on it. So that's just not going to happen. But it got me to thinking about toxic relationships, even brief ones like that one. But there's toxicity all around, and it has been greatly amplified over the last several years with the advent of social media. And I guess I never really saw a lot of that until probably the last 2 or 3 years or so, where one, I've started doing the podcast and meeting a whole bunch of great people. And I would say the vast majority of people out there are very nice people. They're willing to do things for you. They're willing to just be nice, friendly, and cordial. And then there's those people who, one, are narcissistic because they want all the attention on themselves and they think they're above criticism, but they can lash out at anybody they want. So there's that type of toxicity, and unfortunately, I've experienced it over the last few years, and I've also seen it happen to a lot of people I know. Some very dear friends of mine who, either fell in love or had a great friendship with somebody only to find out that they were up to absolutely no good. And it's so unfortunate to me that, one, you got into that relationship, whether it be a friendship, romantic, marriage, whatever. One, that you got into it, and two, you can't really get yourself out of it. And I'm kind of going through something like that right now with a particular person that they're very engaging and they make friends faster than anybody I've ever seen. Now, the thing with that person, though, is they know how to make friends. They don't know how to keep friends because, at least in my experience, it's almost always some sort of criticism or knock or, making fun, which I can take as much as the next person, because if I'm giving it out, I better be able to take it. But this is one of those situations where it tends to cross the line, and whether I'm talking to them on the phone or in person with them face to face, that zones out when that starts happening. And yet somehow this person keeps showing up. And either I keep going back or they come back to me and start fresh, for whatever term you want to use it. Now, again, don't get me wrong on this particular person. They are wonderful in small doses. Again, they're very engaging. They can hold up a good conversation when need be. But they get into this, and again, it's just this particular person. Somebody else who meets them may love them, and, God bless them if they do, because they're not being toxic to that person. But this person gets toxic with me. And it's just a whole bunch of things that really annoy me and I have pet peeves over. And I don't do that with a lot of people. But with this person, it's almost hitting every toxic button that's in me. Like, ugh, can't take it anymore. And, I've seen that in a lot of people where two people are together and, they may put up this great front, but then you pull one of them aside and they say, well, this person's doing A, B, C, D, and E that really I can't stand and I don't want to be around that. And one of the unfortunate things is to stay in that type of relationship. I mean, I don't know how else. And I got a feeling a lot of people go through that with somebody in their lives. I can't imagine anybody not going through that where everybody's fantastic to them. They don't annoy you on end, things like that. So, and I, believe me, you're talking to the master of being obnoxious or weird or saying jerky things. So, and I'm probably toxic to more than a few people out there. I know that for a fact. And you try not to be, but there you are. But, again, we need to try to stop that and put that to a minimum, because we've all got one life out here, and the last thing that any of us need is for somebody to, just hit those buttons that, you can't stand being around them, but then you end up going back to them. And the toxicity that I see is not only in personal relationships, but in relationships with people you don't meet. And you automatically assume that they're something that they're not. And we're looking at a perfect political example as we speak. Because there's the protesters who automatically assume that anybody who is MAGA or Republican or conservative is some sort of evil fascist. And on the flip side, there's people who think that all liberals are just these uneducated, low information, angry, bitter people. And, more times than not, they are not on either side. We're just trying to get through this life, and there's people who are spewing this toxicity with each other in personal relationships and then with people you don't even know. And, we're making assumptions about people that, a lot of times they can turn out to be true, but again, my personal feeling is I think most of us are just trying to get through life, get up, go to work, go to school, have lunch, work a little more, learn a little more, come home, watch a little TV, go to bed, and start it over again. So, I mean, I guess my basic thing here is, yeah, you're going to find people that are toxic to you personally, and then there's those out there that you don't know who, you feel are being toxic to you, or vice versa, you're being toxic to them by assuming the worst. And my faith tells me that that shouldn't be so. That, people are going to irritate you to no end. People are going to put negative impacts on your life. And that is the one thing you need to get out of your life. And what the solution to that is, if it's a consistent problem, get it out of there. And I'm just saying, just cut them out of your life. You got way better things to do than to be around that negative, toxic person. So it's definitely not the easiest thing to do. Unfortunately, there's too many marriages out there, and a 50% divorce rate kind of speaks to that, where, one or both of them are not getting along as they should. And I've never been married, but my experience says, couples are going to argue. It's just, you can't always get along hunky-dory. It's so rare. You're going to have arguments, but if the arguing is consistent, if any sort of abuse is happening, that's a toxic relationship. And everybody's like, duh, no kidding. But more times than not, it's how are you going to get out of it? And again, it's not easy. I don't have an answer other than do what you can to get out of that toxic relationship. Now, it's another thing if you're, say, unhappy, if you think the mate is boring or something along those lines, that's a whole different issue. That's not necessarily toxicity. That's something that the two of you would need to work on. So, coming close to my set time limit on this. But, again, the toxicity is unfortunately growing in number out there. And a couple things we need to do is, if there's a personal toxic relationship in your life, do what you can to get that out of your life. And you have to truly know it's toxic and not just someone who's kind of being a little bit of a pain or being obnoxious or what have you. There's a little bit of a difference. If it's putting a negative impact on your life, it's toxic. Get it out of there. And in terms of those who are finding toxicity in total strangers, the biggest thing I can tell you is pray on it, because God will give you an answer on what you need to do with that particular situation. You see it all over the news, and believe me, it's happening on both sides. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that, but I believe right now it's a lot more prevalent on one side because of one person. And they need to take a step back and say, okay, before, prior to 10 years ago, most people never gave a second thought on that person, and I won't mention his name, but you may know him as POTUS, and that, the negativity towards him was few and far between. He came down the escalator, and it was a poop storm after that. They hate him because he's there, and he doesn't agree with the lifestyle or the policy or whatever you want to say about it. But the guy's not as toxic as you may think. And I'm not saying he's an angel or a saint or anything like that. Because, again, my personal opinion of him is he can be a jerk. But sometimes that's what is required in the job. And he doesn't know how to be a politician. And you could take that for whatever it's worth. So, but again, I'm kind of picking on one person here, one group of people. And like I said, again, this is one of those things where, you can look at it on either side. We're being toxic, and people are being toxic to you. So, my only advice on that situation is go with God. And he'll point out which ones you need to disagree with, not to get so worked up that it puts a negative impact on your life. So I know they're out there on both sides, and best advice I can give is don't let them get to you. Because if you got faith in God, then you got a pretty good shield around you that will protect you from that toxicity. And again, I'm as human as the rest of you. I let it get to me sometimes, but keep your faith in God and you can stop the toxic. Stop it with you. Because if it stops with you and you try to be as minimally toxic as humanly possible, then that can spread around. And we definitely need a lot more positivity and making sure that, we're all in this together. The law obviously needs to be followed, but, we got a lot more in common than we don't have in common. So that's my take on it. I want to thank you guys for listening and watching me rant on and on. Hopefully I haven't bored you to tears. I will be back next week with some other sort of subject. So, for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, I am putting a comment, or I'm putting a link in the comments if you wish to be a supporter of the show. So, we could get a better camera. My mic is pretty darn good. So, hopefully, it's picking up what I'm saying. I went with top of the line. So, again, it's a boy and his microphone. I can always get it improved. But be a supporter of the show. Just let me know that you're listening. You like what you hear. And if you have any sort of comments, obviously, YouTube, Spotify, those are two of the places to comment. My email is miketothy@gmail.com. MIKETOTHE, the letter Y. Mike to the Y, not Mike to they, as a lot of my creditors like to call it. But it's MikeToTheY@gmail.com. Put the subject "no feet," and one day I'll even show you the prosthetics, the stumps, all sorts of stuff. So, but thank you so much again for listening. It's always a pleasure to have you guys hear me. So I want to wish you good night, good day, good evening. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care. Remember to be the surprise onion ring in somebody's french fries.